Hello and thank you for tuning in. You're watching The Property Guide on ET Now. I'm Faye D'Souza. This is your one-stop guide to property investments in India. Once again, thank you so much for the responses you sent in during the week. Keep them coming in. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. We're going to try and answer as many of those questions on this show. Over the next half hour, our experts tell us which Tier 2 city will give you the highest return in the next year. We'll talk about the Maharashtra government's move to hike ready reckoner rates in the state. What does this mean for you? And in our Meet the Developer segment, we focus on Rustomji. All right, joining us today on the show, Ashutosh Limaye, Head of Research at Jones Lang LaSalle, and Jayashree Kurup, Head of Content at Magic Bricks. It's a pleasure to have them both on the show. All right, we talked about all of the metros on this show, and I want to start focusing on Tier 2 cities, which is the second rung. But we also know that over the last 5 or 6 years, Tier 2 cities are giving far higher returns than we had expected. Also, the rentals are far higher than we expected as well. The reason why I've got together these two wonderful guests is that they're both experts in this particular area. I'm going to start with Jayashree right now. Jayashree, you look at the website on a regular basis. Tell us which of these cities, in terms of Tier 2, do you expect the most growth from?
Actually, across the Tier 2 markets, I see a lot of, if you're an investor, there is a lot of return that you can get out of these markets. I'll tell you the reason. Capital values have not gone up exponentially. In 40, 50 lakh, you can get a really, really good property, 2 BHK, 3 BHK. And the rental returns have, for some reason, been steadily rising. Today, in many of these small markets, that is, I would say, Vadodara, I see roughly about 4.5%, 5% returns, which for residential is very good. And in some other markets, I think we are seeing a rise in property rental returns. So, you know, it's very much like the big cities. You see 12,000, 15,000, 25,000 per month returns, and you have actually invested only about 40 lakh. So the yield that you get out of your property is fairly high, and that is one reason why I think there is a lot of interest in Tier 2 markets.
Well, give us a list of names in terms of the cities where you see the most interest in for end user buying. So if I'm an investor looking for which city to focus on, which one would you point me in?
The Vizag market, Bhubaneswar, Vadodara, Indore, Nagpur. These are all cities, the cities that are driven by good quality commercial demand, which means it could either be driven by IT and ITES, or it could be driven by manufacturing. In Nagpur's case, I think there is a lot of warehousing business as well that is happening, and therefore the end user demand for rental properties has risen.
Ashutosh, do you agree with that list? Vizag, Bhubaneswar, Vadodara, Indore, Nagpur. Is that also what's popping up in your research as well, or do you have more to add to it?
I think those cities are certainly up there on the real estate map when it comes to Tier 2 and Tier 3 markets. I would add some names to that as well. Kochi, Mangalore, Jaipur, Lucknow, Kanpur. So I think India is a very populous country, and we have 54 cities with a million plus population. And Tier 2, 3 cities are now showing the promise. I think the trend of nuclearization of families and urbanization is taking shape everywhere. It is not only the big metros that are seeing this, but the relatively smaller cities are also witnessing that. And then people are changing their ways of living life, and they look at big cities in terms of what different offerings are available, and they want to experience that as well.
So if I were to take advantage of this social change that you just mentioned, would that mean that as an investor I should go into these cities and pick up apartments instead of maybe villas and land, because that social change would then lend itself to resale prices of apartments, wouldn't it?
I think it will be a close call, because as citizens of big cities, we are thrilled with villas and plots because we don't get to buy them with high entry barrier in big cities. But at the same time, I think in smaller cities, I think the demand is more for apartments, particularly from the rental housing perspective. People usually will go with villa and plot in their mind, but I would advise them to consider apartments as well.
Jayashree, if you talked about the fact that the Indore market is going to be one of the most successful markets, give us areas within Indore that we should focus on right now.
In Indore, the super corridor is something that the government has planned. The super corridor is planned by the Indore Development Authority, and there is a very large stretch, about a 12 to 13-kilometer stretch, starting from the airport right up to Vijay Square within the city. And in this area, you have, it has been proposed that it should be evolve as a commercial hub, and it has large IT, SEZ, educational, sports, medical hubs. So you see, it's a very well-planned corridor. And within this corridor, there is a lot of commercial and residential projects that have been proposed. You have the DLF, which has launched a very large project here. You have Omax, Malwa County. National developers have moved into Indore, seeing the potential of the city, and the super corridor is one area where there is a lot of interest in Indore, both from the supply side, because developers have launched projects, and from the demand side, I think it is a very well searched area in the Indore market on our website. You also have, I think, TCS and Infosys have acquired huge land parcels, over 100 acres in these areas. So that is an area of interest. The other areas I would say is about the Khandwa Road and the Bypass Road, both of which we see a lot of searches happening.
Ashutosh, I want to ask you about Nagpur and Vizag. Now, Jayashree did mention the fact that there is a lot of warehousing happening in Nagpur. There's not as much IT, but there is a lot of other businesses that are mushrooming there. If someone is looking to make an investment in Nagpur, where would you like them to focus their attention?
I think Nagpur has seen a lot of infrastructure development on the southern corridor, which is the Mihan corridor, and the Wardha Road, Butiburi industrial estate side. And I think that is a much talked about corridor, and several developers have taken exposure there. Several investors also have taken exposure there. But I think that corridor has a longer gestation time, because it's linked with the Mihan project and the airport modernization program. I think not many people have really understood Nagpur's city potential. I think besides the Jamtha and the Wardha Road Mihan stretches, within the city, like Mumbai, Nagpur has old factories and mills which are now defunct. And we have good redevelopment projects which are taking shape in Nagpur city proper. Be it Ganesh Pet or be it the Gandhi Sagar Talav. So the location is very well within the city center, and at the same time you can have the luxury of integrated development, gated communities, all the contemporary amenities. So I think those projects I would highly recommend to investors to consider.
I also want to ask you about Vizag. Now, within south of India, there was a lot of talk about Mysore and Mangalore maybe 5 odd years ago. That talk has died down quite a lot, but Vizag is still going very strong. Now, if I'm looking at Vizag, should I be looking at the beachfront? Is that the only thing worth looking at, or should we look at the rest of the city as well?
No, I think Vizag is much more than the seafront, and I think Vizag is a city which is unique in many ways. It has got large institutional, defense and industrial establishments, meaning that the economic base is diverse. It is perhaps the most cosmopolitan city of Andhra after Hyderabad. I think Vizag has got seafront, it has got hills, it has got plains, and it has got substantial areas which are no development areas. It could be the defense establishments, it could be the factories. So Vizag has a lot of chance to grow like an amoeba, and where there could be surprises along different corridors, different scenic.
Give us locations within Vizag that you think make sense at this point.
I would place the Bimuli-Patnam corridor to be a promising one. It gives you hills, it gives you seafront, and it gives you great infrastructure to connect with the city. And of course, we have Voltaire. So those would be my picks.
Those are the picks then for Tier 2 cities. Now, if you have a city in mind that you are looking at and you'd want us to review it on the show, write to us on our email ID at the bottom of your screen. I'm also going to leave you with some very quick investment options within Tier 2 cities, and then we'll come back and answer some questions. If you're looking to make an investment in a Tier 2 city, here are some projects you might want to consider. In Vadodara, Riviera by Pratham Developers and Sanidhya by Srinath Group. In Nagpur, Daffodils by the Pioneer Group and City 4 by Pyramid Group. In Vizag, Florence by Novus Infra, Gold Coast by Chaitanya Kiran Housing. And finally in Indore, DCNPL Hills and Vihar by Sartak Estate Developers. Welcome back. You're watching the Property Guide in ET Now. I'm Faye D'Souza. Thank you for staying with us. Our guests Ashutosh and Jayashree are still with us, helping us make smart decisions when it comes to property. Now, 2014 hasn't begun on a very bright note for Maharashtra and the real estate market here as well. The Maharashtra government has hiked the ready reckoner rates by 20% in Mumbai and a maximum of 20% in Pune, with effect of the 1st of January this year. Take a look. But the Maharashtra state government has decided to hike ready reckoner rates by 20% effective the 1st of January this year. Now, ready reckoner rate is used to calculate the minimum registration and stamp duty charges to be paid while registering property. It's also a government fixed rate below which property sale cannot take place in a given area. The move comes at a time when developers are grappling with sluggish sales and low consumer sentiment. While the move will help the government rake in higher revenues, for buyers it means a higher transaction cost. Builders will pass the hike on to consumers, which is likely to pull down demand even further. Since stamp duty and registration charges are paid directly to the government, banks do not consider it as part of a home loan. In 2013, the government had hiked ready reckoner rates by 30%, so that's a total of a 50% hike in 2 years. All right, so we're going to find out what that means for us exactly. Ashutosh, it does sound like a lot of bad news, but it does not mean that the prices of my homes are going to go up now by 20%, right? What does this mean exactly for someone looking to buy a home?
I think it's a good question, and I think we need a good discussion to happen on that, because the things are not as bad as they are
as they're being painted to be.
Absolutely. Yes. Ready reckoner rates are instrumental in deciding what stamp duty the buyer needs to pay, and in Maharashtra the stamp duty is 5%. So any increase in stamp duty in ready reckoner rates will have an impact on stamp duty, because we have seen that the market rates are invariably 15 to 20% higher than the ready reckoner rates. Also, I think the good point about this is it should help improve the transparency and mode of payment, because if there is a 100% check transaction, the agreement amount is fully disclosed as the market rate, it's going to be anyway higher than the ready reckoner rate, and you're still going to pay by the ready reckoner value. So I think not everything is bad. I think
so. This is actually the important takeaway. If I was going to do a fully white deal anyways on a property, this doesn't affect me in any way. That's
absolutely right. Because your value is invariably going to be more than the ready reckoner value. So it will be that much of increment on the difference that you will need to bear.
Jayashree, tell us what this means for sentiment within Mumbai. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks about how the sentiment in Mumbai is really soft right now. Builders are not able to make sales. It was a really damp festive season as well. Now with this coming out at this point, what have you heard on the ground? What does this mean for sentiment?
Actually, I think more than anything else, it is the fear that property prices are going to go up. I think there are two things here. When the Maharashtra government announced the hike, they also announced a massive hike of a 15% hike for super luxury properties. And I think the composite impact of that was that the media did go out and say that this is going to lead to a huge price rise. More than anything, I think what needs to be understood is that if you are paying by a check, and if that is your means of payment, then you have nothing to fear. It is only when you had a huge discrepancy between how much you paid in black and white, that's when the impact happens.
This is the key takeaway. Don't worry so much about the ready reckoner rates, especially if you are planning to make a completely white deal with your builder. It doesn't affect you in any way. Let's take a few questions. Manoj Balla has written in. He wants to buy a 2-bedroom apartment in Whitefield or Sarjapur Road in Bangalore with a budget of 30 lakh rupees. He also wants to know if it possibly makes more sense to look at maybe the Mysore Road junction instead. Jayashree, with a budget of 30 lakh rupees, what can he afford in those areas of Bangalore?
Faye, there are obviously this user has done some amount of research, and when I look at what's happening on my website, I see that on Magic Bricks a lot of small developers have put up their projects there, and in some cases, there's even Skylark which has a project on in Whitefield in this budget. The thing is that he would be able to get projects. Big developers, certainly not. Small developers, yes. But then when you buy with small developers, there's a big risk. And you have to actually check whether that developer has been delivering, and go with the project. Check out, you need to do your research very, very thoroughly. You can get within 30 lakhs. I think looking at my website, I can see 7 or 8 options in these two localities. Even in Uttarahalli, he has good options.
All right, we have another question. Shyam Babu has written in, he wants to buy a plot of land in Chennai with a budget of 5 to 7 lakh rupees and an investment horizon of 3 to 5 years. What options would you give him? If he's looking at Chennai, 3 to 5 year horizon, that's not a lot in terms of land. But is there a neighborhood that you think makes sense within his budget?
Yes, I think in India, land is very unpredictable in terms of forecasting appreciation. All we can predict is it has to be positive appreciation. But I think if the investment amount is small, like in this case, I would advise him to start looking for options on the Oragadam corridor, which connects the GST and NH4 with OMR, the two most happening corridors. I would advise him to also look at Sri Perumbudur, close to Mahindra World City and about. And if he is familiar with northern Chennai and northwestern Chennai, I would advise him to look at the Avadi corridor, where the railways and the public sector companies have expansion plans lined up.
Now let's take another question very quickly. Bilal Khan has written in. He wants to buy an apartment in Gurgaon with a budget of 60 lakh rupees. He's narrowed down his choices to the Vatica Amelia floors and the BPTP Spatio project. He wants to know if it makes better sense perhaps to look at Dwarka Expressway instead of Gurgaon. Jashi, I'm obviously going to come to you. You're a Delhi expert. Now, Dwarka Expressway or Gurgaon, and he's only looking to hold this apartment for about 2 years. Which one makes more sense?
Actually, he's looking at the same corridor. The Dwarka Expressway and the Pataudi Road, both are very close to each other, and both their fortunes of both are linked to the Dwarka Expressway being constructed. Now, the Dwarka Expressway is a project that has been immensely delayed because of certain land acquisition problems, which means that actually once the land is cleared, he would get his appreciation because Dwarka Expressway has been waiting for this appreciation. The second place that he's asking for is very close to the Pataudi Road, and that road is already constructed and ready, the 81 to 92. Now, what he can do is, nobody can predict whether in 1.5 to 2 years we will get a huge appreciation. For people who invested early on, they have got up to 50-60% appreciation. However, Dwarka Expressway and the Pataudi Road have already been leveraged. The value has been leveraged. So if he expects huge rises, I don't think so. But a steady 12-15% rise once the Dwarka Expressway takes off and it becomes livable is a good option.
Welcome back. You're watching the Property Guide at ET now. It's time for our Meet the Developer segment. Joining us today is Chandresh Mehta, Director at the Rustomjee Group. Chandresh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, we know that it's been a soft year for Mumbai in terms of sales. For Rustomjee in particular, you're operating out of Thane, out of Virar. Tell us what the response has been across your various properties.
Real estate and infrastructure has seen phenomenal growth in the past 2 decades. And with growth, obviously, when there are periods of high growth, they're followed by periods where there is expectedly a slowdown. And the real estate industry in particular has been going through, like many other sectors of the economy, is going through this slow patch. We are hopeful that the things will turn around. We are hopeful that the economy will improve, show some signs of recovery. And should that happen, I think 2014 should be a good year.
But Chandresh, we've talked in the past about the various offers you have. You have a 24-month rent back offer on your Urbania project, the 80-20 scheme on your Global City project in Virar. Now, we know that the RBI has instructed banks to no longer entertain the 80-20 scheme. So tell us how you are still making it happen at your Virar property.
The 80-20 scheme in Virar is being offered by us as developers. So we take 20% booking from the customer, and since the project is at a high end of completion and I am safely on the sold position, no bank is involved, no bank financing is involved, and hence I don't think anybody should have an issue with that.
And what are the other schemes you're offering right now? We know you've not brought down your prices, but in terms of schemes and discounts, what else do you have on the table?
So in terms of 80-20, this is what we are doing in Virar. In Thana, we have got a scheme whereby we are giving rent back, 24 months rent back. See, of late, the last couple of years, especially Bombay has seen a great amount of issues in terms of delivery, and the confidence of the buyer has taken a beating in terms of delivery. To bring that confidence back, we are assuring a rent back scheme in Thana to ensure that the customer has that confidence that he is now going to get possession of his property, and with respect in a time bound program.
Well, earlier on the show, we did talk about the fact that the Maharashtra state government has hiked ready reckoner rates by 20%. Do you view this perhaps as a setback for consumers as well? What does this mean for your business?
This was actually a shocker. No one was expecting. As a matter of fact, over the last year and a half, property prices have, if not increased, if not decreased, definitely not increased. So the government going about and increasing the reckoner value and making it that much more costlier for everybody, the objective was only to increase revenue. Yes, definitely it has had an impact definitely on the buyer, and also it has had an impact on the cost side in terms of many of the premiums that are needed to be paid to the government are linked to the reckoner value, and that would mean additional cost to the customer. So the customer is going to get hit in two ways. All these costs are definitely going to be passed on to the customer. So I think it is not a very welcome move. It is counterproductive.
All right, Chandresh, many thanks for joining us on the Property Guide. That's a wrap on this show. Remember, you can write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. You'll find a copy of the show on our Facebook page, and you can reach me personally on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching.